What you're about to hear goes far beyond a simple car reveal. Because inside Ferrari's garage, something is happening that the FIA hasn't officially disclosed. New reports suggest Lewis Hamilton's SF-26 may exploit a loophole so subtle, it could rewrite the 2026 season before the first race. And later, we'll show why what insiders are quietly calling Ferrari's biggest secret might change Formula One forever. Ferrari is preparing to unveil the SF-26, a car that could define the next era of Formula One. But what you see publicly is only part of the story. Behind closed doors, engineers and management have been operating under extreme secrecy. Every decision, every iteration, every wind tunnel run is part of a plan that the outside world barely glimpses. And this isn't just a new car. Sources suggest it may contain elements that challenge the way rules are interpreted, and the FIA may be quietly paying attention. The 2025 season was a disaster for Ferrari. The SF-25 failed at multiple levels, leaving Hamilton without a single podium, and Leclerc struggling to extract consistent performance. Team morale was shattered. Engineers worked around the clock, yet their solutions never seemed to stick. The failures weren't minor, they were systemic, from aerodynamics to suspension behavior to tire management. The entire team faced the reality that continuing the same approach would lead to stagnation or worse, a decline in the coming years. This is what makes Project 678, the internal codename for the SF-26, so significant. Ferrari made a radical choice. In April 2025, they completely halted development of the SF-25, redirecting all resources to a car designed from the ground up for 2026 regulations. This wasn't just forward thinking, it was a calculated gamble. They sacrificed immediate competitiveness for the chance to enter 2026 with an unprecedented advantage. Engineers, designers, and drivers were now fully focused on a car that could either restore Ferrari to the top or expose them to new risks. The secrecy surrounding the SF-26 has been meticulous. Only a handful of people have seen the final design before the public reveal on January 23rd. Sources indicate that critical components, including the chassis and the new power unit, were finalized literally days before the presentation. This compressed timeline is not typical for Ferrari, suggesting an intensity and urgency within Maranello that goes beyond normal operational pressure. The implication is clear. The team is racing against both the clock and unseen regulatory scrutiny. Hamilton's role in this project cannot be overstated. After a historically difficult 2025, he approached the SF-26 with renewed focus. His input on steering, energy management, and car balance was direct and detailed, indicating a partnership between driver and engineering team that is unusual even for a veteran like him. Insiders hint that Hamilton's collaboration may have influenced design decisions that could provide subtle yet crucial advantages once the car hits the track. Leclerc, meanwhile, has been pushing the team relentlessly, making clear that he sees this as a now-or-never moment in his championship pursuit. Yet the question of reliability looms. Ferrari is experimenting with innovations no team has dared attempt recently, such as the steel cylinder head in the power unit and a double pushrod suspension configuration. While these could provide performance gains, they also introduce risk. One failure in testing, one miscalculation in integration could compromise races or even the entire season. And the compressed timeline means the margin for error is extraordinarily small. Even minor setbacks could have outsized consequences. Finally, the FIA factor cannot be ignored. While Ferrari presents the SF-26 as fully compliant, sources suggest that regulators are reviewing aspects of the car more closely than they admit publicly. Certain innovations may exist in a gray area of the 2026 rules, leaving room for interpretation or even challenge later in the season. The tension between a team pushing the limits and a governing body enforcing compliance creates a silent, ongoing battle. And this is just the beginning of the story. The real revelations about how the SF-26 operates and the potential consequences will emerge later. The leak itself is subtle, but its implications are enormous. Sources suggest that Ferrari's SF-26 engine might contain innovations that were never meant to be public. One element quietly mentioned within the team is a steel alloy cylinder head, a radical departure from decades of aluminum standards. Engineers claim it could improve combustion stability and thermal efficiency far beyond what anyone expected. But this isn't confirmed. It's speculation based on data that the FIA hasn't officially released. And here's the twist. While technically legal under 2026 rules, insiders point out that these innovations may exploit a gray area. The car could be performing in a zone that regulators are still reviewing. It isn't outright illegal, but it's not fully clean either. Sources hint that if the FIA examines this too closely, the definition of compliance could suddenly shift, leaving Ferrari in a vulnerable position mid-season. What's more, internal leak data hints at performance metrics that far exceed Ferrari's public statements. Preliminary figures timing, energy deployment efficiency, thermal readings suggest gains that, if accurate, would put Hamilton and Leclerc in a potentially unassailable position during the early races. But the catch, this is all fragmentary, incomplete, and unverifiable. The team itself may not even fully understand the long-term reliability of these innovations yet. The leak also raises questions about how much influence the drivers had in shaping the car. Hamilton reportedly submitted detailed technical notes on energy management and steering layout. Some insiders claim these inputs directly influenced engine mapping and chassis balance. If true, it's rare even in Formula One for a driver to have such a measurable effect on car performance at the design stage. It also hints at why Ferrari is willing to push boundaries that might catch the FIA's attention. And this is where the official narrative starts to crack. Publicly, Ferrari describes the SF-26 as fully compliant, safe, and tested. But these leaks suggest that the car's real behavior may only be revealed once it hits the track. Sources quietly warn that initial laps could expose risks or validate the bold gamble. Either outcome carries consequences that reach far beyond Maranello. The SF-26 isn't just about speed. The combination of steel cylinder heads, compact cooling systems, and double pushrod suspension is designed to maximize energy efficiency and aerodynamics simultaneously. Experts outside the team are reportedly stunned by what little data they've glimpsed. Yet no one outside Ferrari knows exactly how these systems interact under full race conditions. Every detail could tip the scales for better or worse. And perhaps most concerning for rivals, the leak hints that the FIA may already be aware, at least internally, that Ferrari is operating in uncharted territory. Official statements remain neutral, even reassuring. But what insiders are quietly pointing to is a silent investigation, one that could alter perceptions, rules enforcement, and ultimately the early 2026 championship standings. And the full implications of this are only beginning to emerge. What makes the SF-26 truly controversial is not a single component, it's the combination of technical innovation and regulatory ambiguity. The steel alloy cylinder head, the double pushrod suspension, and the compact cooling architecture all individually fall within the rules. But together, they create a package that may operate in a zone the FIA didn't explicitly anticipate. Sources suggest internal memos quietly flag this as a potential compliance issue, though nothing has been made public. Insiders also hint at the stakes beyond technology. There's money, political leverage, and reputational power on the line. Ferrari has invested nearly a year of undivided focus on the SF-26, while other teams split attention between their 2025 and 2026 cars. If this gamble pays off, the team could dominate the reset regulatory era, establishing an advantage that persists for years. But if it fails, or if the FIA intervenes mid-season, the consequences could be catastrophic. Adding complexity, Hamilton's influence appears to be larger than usual. According to reports, his technical input shaped decisions that could materially affect the car's energy management and drivability. Sources suggest he's not only driving, but actively co-developing. That raises questions internally. Does Ferrari risk placing too much responsibility on one driver? And does that give Hamilton leverage over strategic choices within the team? Meanwhile, internal communications hint at tension between the engineering leadership and FIA liaisons. One leak note reportedly reads, "Confirm compliance internally before public tests." It suggests a recognition that the SF-26 may push the boundaries of legality. But how far can Ferrari push without triggering sanctions? And will the FIA enforce limits evenly across all teams, or is this scrutiny unique to Ferrari? The twist deepens with the timing. The final chassis approval came just days before the public reveal. Sources describe an all-hands, all-night session finalizing critical elements with minimal iteration. That raises two questions simultaneously. Was this a necessary risk to optimize performance, or was it a procedural gamble that could expose flaws once the car runs under race conditions? Past precedent shows the FIA tends to react slowly to gray areas, but the SF-26 may test that patience. Similar situations in Formula One history, like the DAS system Mercedes used in 2020, show that even technically legal innovations can provoke regulatory adjustments mid-season. For Ferrari, the uncertainty isn't just about performance, it's about potential disruption from a governing body at the highest level. And finally, the most intriguing detail. Some insiders suggest that the leak itself may have been intentional, a way to send a subtle message to competitors and the FIA. If true, it would imply a level of strategic maneuvering that extends far beyond engineering, where the team uses information, secrecy, and timing as tools in the championship battle. But how much of this is reality, and how much is speculation? That question remains unanswered, and it's one that could define the first half of 2026. What few people outside Maranello understand is the scale of the gamble Ferrari is taking with the SF-26. It's not just about lap times or winning races, it's about controlling the regulatory narrative, engineering risk, and psychological resilience across the entire team. Insiders warn that the compressed timeline for chassis approval and integration of the steel cylinder head could leave untested weaknesses lurking beneath the surface, issues that may only become apparent under full race stress. The SF-26 innovations also have ripple effects on the wider championship. A car that operates at the edge of legality could force rivals to rethink their entire 2026 approach. Teams like Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren may need to adopt aggressive, untested modifications just to keep pace. But this comes with its own risk. Pushing their cars into unexplored technical territory could result in failures that compromise not only races but driver safety. The balance of power may shift even before the first race. There's also a subtle but critical psychological factor. Ferrari staff endured the crushing failure of 2025, a season where even a driver of Hamilton's caliber struggled to extract performance. That trauma, sources suggest, is still present. Engineers and designers are now operating under extreme pressure, knowing the success of the SF-26 could determine not just championships, but careers and reputations. Any misstep, mechanical or strategic, could trigger internal friction, blame, or panic. The FIA dimension adds another layer of uncertainty. Officially, Ferrari is compliant, but the leaked data implies the regulators are internally questioning elements of the SF-26. What is being tolerated quietly today could be challenged publicly tomorrow. Historical precedent shows the FIA has sometimes allowed gray area innovations to continue until a complaint or enforcement decision forces action mid-season. If Ferrari is forced to make changes after the first few races, the consequences could be catastrophic for the team's campaign and long-term strategy. And there's a broader political context. Insiders hint at tensions between the FIA and major manufacturers over rule interpretation. Ferrari's SF-26, by exploiting subtle ambiguities, could inadvertently spark regulatory scrutiny that extends beyond just this car. The implications could affect engine design philosophies, chassis regulations, and energy management rules across the grid. What seems like a technical story is, in fact, a story about influence, power, and who decides the limits in modern Formula One. Perhaps most striking, the leak itself may carry strategic intent. By letting fragments of the SF-26's capabilities escape, Ferrari could be shaping the narrative, signaling rivals that they've pushed the boundaries, while also testing the FIA's reaction in a controlled way. It's unclear if this was deliberate or accidental, but either scenario reveals the high-stakes chessboard on which Formula One operates, where information is currency and timing is everything. Finally, the deeper worry for the FIA is precedent. If Ferrari's approach proves effective, other teams may pursue similar strategies, testing the edges of the 2026 regulations in ways the governing body did not anticipate. That could lead to a cascade of gray area designs, forcing the FIA to respond mid-season and potentially rewriting the understanding of legality in real time. And at the moment, no one outside the teams truly knows how far this will go or what the full consequences will be. The SF-26 doesn't just affect Ferrari, it has the potential to reshape the entire 2026 grid. Early data suggests that the engine's efficiency, combined with the compact aerodynamics, could place Ferrari within striking distance of Mercedes and Red Bull before the first race. If Hamilton can unlock the full potential of the car, even Leclerc's performance may appear secondary, giving Ferrari multiple strategic avenues to dominate. Rivals are watching closely. Mercedes reportedly has the strongest 2026 power unit on paper, but leaks suggest Ferrari may be closing the gap or even surpassing them in certain metrics. Red Bull and McLaren are not standing still. However, if they underestimated Ferrari's design philosophy, the first half of the season could produce surprising results, with Ferrari potentially controlling race pace through sheer technical superiority. The implications for Hamilton are significant. After a disastrous 2025, this could be his final window to chase an 8th World Championship. Sources indicate that his involvement in design, especially in steering wheel ergonomics and energy deployment, may allow him to extract more from the car than any other driver. But the SF-26 is complex. Any misjudgment in energy management or failure in the steel cylinder head could erase that advantage entirely. The two-spec strategy, Spec A for initial validation and Spec B for ultimate performance, is another key factor. Ferrari is deliberately hiding their full pace until official tests. This means rivals may enter the first races blind, unsure of the true capability of the SF-26. The window between testing and the first race is short, so Ferrari's advantage could be decisive if executed perfectly. But any error in this high-stakes rollout could backfire spectacularly. Beyond lap times, the SF-26 could influence future regulatory interpretations. If Ferrari demonstrates an advantage through subtle gray area engineering, other teams may attempt to replicate these methods. That could provoke FIA clarification or even mid-season rule adjustments, altering the competitive landscape not just in 2026, but across the next regulation cycle. Ferrari's gamble may therefore not only affect their own season, but also set the tone for the grid's evolution. The psychological impact on rival teams cannot be understated. Reports from insiders suggest that the SF-26 reveal and early testing results, even partial, have created anxiety in competitor factories. Engineers are already reassessing design assumptions, while drivers face the uncertainty of facing a car that might operate beyond known limits. In F1, this kind of mental pressure can be as decisive as technical performance. Finally, the scenario isn't guaranteed. If Ferrari misjudges any element thermal stress on the steel head, suspension integration, or energy deployment under real race conditions, the consequences could be severe. Grid penalties, reliability failures, or even strategic missteps could hand rivals an unexpected advantage. And while the potential for glory is immense, the stakes mean a single miscalculation could define the next 4 years for the Scuderia.